I'm Leslie Robinson. I'm the girl that always did the shoulds. It did start out that way. It started out with me living in this magical world with high, high mountains and fjords and beaches and cedar trees that I could climb. And my earliest memories are running along logs. And I was so nimble-footed. It was like I was being suspended by strings, like I was a puppet. And that nature was holding me in place. And that I was talking with the divas and the spirits in the trees and the ocean and under the rocks and climbing up those cedar trees. And I was at one with it all. And this one day, I came in and I was talking with my mom. And I was like 5. And I told my mom what I was doing and what the divas had said to me that day. Well, I was sitting on a chair, one of those maple chairs, kitchen chairs, and on 3 Encyclopedia Britannicas, because we were a very booky family. And she was curling my hair, and I hated it, right? And when I was telling her the story, I was still animated, and it's like, hold still, hold still. And I said, but mom, like this. And she said, don't be silly. And it was one more time that I had heard it. And part of me inside started to shrink. And as it was shrinking, I didn't quite understand, but it was shrinking down like this. And I heard this voice in my head that said, don't blow out the pilot light, booming in my head. Okay, I know to listen to that voice, but what's a pilot light? But what I knew is that for this place down here, I had to just make it really small. So that I would protect it, whatever the pilot light was. And I knew one day I would open it up, but I didn't know what that would look like. So then I was the really good girl. I was the girl guide who went to international camp. I got straight A's on honor roll. I got into university. I got scholarships. I married a professor. I had 2 beautiful children. I lived in a house that was, where everybody would come to play, and we had the hot tub. We lived on the other side of the world. I had a career. I had a degree. I had it all of it. Until I didn't. Until something just kept niggling away at me, and I couldn't do it anymore. And so the marriage fell apart. And I had another relationship, which was even worse because it turned to be abusive. And so in the middle of the night, I scooped up my 2 kids, called the police, and we left under police escort. And it's like, whose life is this? This isn't the life of the girl that was running on logs. And this isn't the life of, the consummate professional who's succeeding at everything in her life. What is this? I'm an abused woman in now becoming a single mother, and I had to quit work because all I did was cry. So things got worse. Shortly after we arrived at my parents' house, the next day, actually, my dad went out the door in a stretcher, and a few months later, he was dead. The abusive partner was dead or died, and his father, my father-in-law, died. And, it was just like everything just came crashing down. I didn't know which way to turn. And there was one night, and I was pretty much at my wit's end. I'd been steadily planning on ways to exit this life. And I walked in and I saw my son, innocent, 7 years old or so, sleeping. And there he was, ramrod straight, at attention, with his Star Trek uniform on that was up to his shins, but he wouldn't ever take it off because he loved it so much. And he had his little yellow puppy just here in his arm, cradling it. It's like, oh. Then I walked in on my daughter, 2 years old, with all her little stuffies and pillows around her. And she was lying there with her nightie up over her sweet little bum. And she was just pink and soft and trusting on her thumb. And, excuse me, shit, fuck, damn it all to hell. I can't go. I have to stay. And it's like, now what? You tell me. It's like love. Be love, live love, love. Whatever that meant. Well, a short while later, I got myself into a master's program at the university in adult education. It just opened up for like 2 weeks. And I said, yep, I'll take that seat in adult education. Thank you very much. And 2 weeks later, the new dean came in, they closed it down, and I was in, and I had to create my own program. How magical was that? And then things started to keep happening for me. And books would literally fall off the shelf. We've heard the story. They did. The first one that did that for me was Margaret Wheatley's Leadership in the New Science. All of a sudden, not only am I in education and training people, but what's happening now is I'm into quantum physics. And how does that impact learning and organizations that I'm doing training in? And so the journey became very deep, very fast, and through existentialism and as I say, it came through right into quantum physics. And at that time, that's all that I could talk about. Nobody else that I could see was talking about it. It's way back in the 90s. Anyway, so I'm now in a class that is the most boring of classes. The professor turned his back to the class the whole time, which of course as a trainer is the last thing that I would ever recommend. And he would be speaking in a monotone like this. And he would fill up 1, 2, 3 boards, blackboards with chalky numbers and equations. And often I couldn't follow him. As soon as I would let it drop, I couldn't get back into his train of thought wavelength. But one day I was following him and something happened. My brain just started to get like itchy and stimulated and excited. And then I kind of felt this feeling. And with this feeling, it started to open. And it's like my head was opening, but how could that happen? And whoosh, out I went. And all of a sudden, I'm now up there on the ceiling in the corner, and I am looking down on my classroom, and I see my body sitting there, and I see that prof droning away on the blackboard. And I'm kind of floating around, and it's like, this is really weird, but I like it. And then I saw like a number float by, and then another one, and then more numbers. And then it's like, oh, I am a number. Oh, I'm seeing the relationships with numbers. I am all numbers. It's like, whoa, like I'm all math. And, for an art student, that was pretty amazing. But it's like, yeah, you are. You are one with all of this. And I said, well, what else is available? What do you want? And I said, well, physics. It's like, okay. So they gave me Newtonian physics. It's like, okay. In. I said, what about quantum physics? Oh, sure. And it came. And it's like, I could see it all. I knew it all. I knew the truth of it. And biology and chemistry, like I was just having a heyday up there. Then I looked down in the classroom and I'm watching boring prof. And he's getting it wrong. Like I'm finding his mistakes. It's like, wow, That's amazing. Hey, but good job, bud. You got the rest of that one, but no, that's not the way that it is. Pretty wild. And then I had to pee. Really? I mean, how inconvenient is that? So I'm up there, but I'm down there, and I gotta pee. But I'm up here having like this wild experience. So it's like, well, now what do I do? And it's like, you gotta go back. Are you kidding me? Yep, you gotta go back. So I started to come like this, back in. And it's like, no, I don't want to. But it's like, you have to. It's like, okay. But just before I came back in, it's like, what do I do with this? And I heard the words, be it. Oh, okay. Not sure how to do that. Gotta pee. Gotta get back in here. And so in I came, and I got to tell you, it was like so uncomfortable because I was so expanded and light. And then it's like, oh, this crickety old body, you know? So in I came, and then the prof sort of turned around and said, okay, class is complete. Picked up my bags, said, thanks for a really interesting class. And I went to the bathroom. So what do you do with all that? Well, you get a master's degree in quantum physics and how people learn. Yep, that's pretty cool. Were they listening at the university to my conversation that I'm having with you right now? Not so much. Sometimes, some people. But it was kind of out there. I was a bit flaky. Up until that moment, though, I was always teaching. Colleges, university. And I was a really good teacher. So I had the curriculum, and I was learning my practice, and I was getting better and better at it. And I love strutting my stuff on the stage there, and I was the sage on the stage. Got great evaluations, and students were doing really well, and they got job placements and for long periods of time, like really respected teacher. After this experience, things really changed. And I found that students were not behaving in ways that I was used to students behaving, which probably had much more to do with how I was behaving. But I didn't know about mirrors and holograms and all that kind of stuff at that point. And so I started to follow the students because they were erupting and with this disparate classroom behavior. And it's like, well, so how do I handle this? So I started to just chat with them, get to know them. And then they would be ready. After I would listen to them, then they would get ready. And I would then set them a problem. And I would ask them a question or two. And what happened was extraordinary in the classrooms. They erupted, but this time they were focused on what they were learning. They were deeply empowered when I said that I didn't know the answer, even though I did. But way better practice to not say that I did and let them find it, because this was the job that they were training for. And I wasn't going to be in their classroom with them or in their offices with them. So I shifted from the guide on the side, or from the sage on the stage, to the guide on the side. I made that shift. They showed me. Years later, I watched a documentary, and I think it was about one of the national parks in the US. And Aboriginals who had not been able to be on the land for like 4 generations were coming back. And they had their children with them, or their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. They brought them to the land. And then they brought them to the land, and they showed them a few things. And then they sat back. And the reporter came up and said, what is it that you're doing? It's like, we are watching our children. They're exploring. They are our teachers, and we are learning. I like that. I like that when things are challenging in a classroom, I love that those pictures by Masaru Emoto, Messages from Water, where you would see these pictures of one solid drop of water, a frozen drop of water under a magnifying glass, and that one dark, that was the polluted industrial water. But after the Buddhist monks came and prayed over the same water, a drop of frozen water from that same place was spritzy, beautiful, like an exquisite snowflake. And so the power of the mind and the intentionality then came into my classrooms. And I started to work more with small groups and not teaching content so much, but much more about process and training trainers, how to be even better trainers, facilitators. And there was one day that a co-facilitator that I love dearly, and we worked together for years, came up to me and he said, Leslie, why is it that whenever somebody pops, as we called it, which happened pretty regularly, why is it that it's always on your watch? Maybe it had something to do with being out there and being in here and being it. So my question for educators is, we know that our educational system was created after the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s in England, and it was brought over to North America. And the purpose of that education was to provide employees for the factories, workers for the factories. And everything's been about productivity and efficiency and profit. So, like my marriage ending and all of that old life doing the shoulds, I'm questioning, what about these crumbling bricks and mortar institutions that we have? Now we have the internet, and of course we have online training. I do online training. And of course we have all of these, but there's still something more as we continue to evolve in our consciousness. And I see it like a revolution in learning. So here's my question for teachers. What if on day one of kindergarten, the first thing that a child learned was muscle testing? Muscle testing is a way of accessing the intrinsic information within our physical bodies. Our bodies know everything. We are microcosms of the macrocosm in a holographic sense. So what if we taught them that is no, or that they would find what no was, but for me, this is what no is, fingers that won't unlock. And what if we know that that is yes? So just for fun, if we fast forward to grade 7 and they're writing their exams to go into grade 8, I can just see a child sitting there going, is the answer A? Is the answer B? Is the answer C? Oh, C. Okay. If the child already knows what the answer is, because their inner knowing, what they know that they really know in here is true, it begs the question, what really are we teaching? How are we teaching? I'm Leslie Robinson, vibrational facilitator, still on the journey.